Namandads, namandads, namandads. Hi, good morning, everyone. And I guess I say aloha, right? Um, Bonjour. Uh, and thank you, Takahashi Sensei, for the introduction, and to Hilo Betsui and everyone for warmly welcoming me. I can feel it over the airwaves, even via Zoom. Um, and waiting for so long. I know I've waited for so long to be with you. Um, and so it was great yesterday to get to see Kamoto Sensei again, who I met at the Jodo Shinshu Center a few years ago. And my old Dharma friend Edith. I don't mean she's old, she's an old friend. Anyway, before I dig myself in further, and also thank you to Jane, who has really ridden the ups and downs of these waves of the pandemic with me, trying to make arrangements for my visit to be with you at Hilobetsuin. And as Takahashi Sensei said, it was scheduled for March 2020, exactly 2 years ago. And I think it was the day before my flight was supposed to go from LAX. We heard in the LA area that some of the TSA agents at LAX had gotten the virus, the COVID virus, and I got really scared. And so we decided maybe it would be wise to cancel because even though there weren't any known cases on your island yet, I didn't want to be that person who brought it. So you're welcome. But then we hoped for last year, and as we know, that didn't happen. And just to be on the safe side, we decided, okay, let's just try to do this via Zoom. So thank you for your warm welcome to me today for your spring equinox Ohigan service. Um, Oh, and one more important person is Christina, who made the technology so smooth yesterday. I was in such a rush to rejoice that everything went without a hitch that I signed off so fast I didn't even thank anyone or say goodbye. But thank you, thank you, thank you. Um, so let's start with a reflection, please. Gasho onegaishimasu. The Buddha is waiting on the other shore, that is, the world of enlightenment, where there's no greed, no anger, no ignorance, no suffering, no agony, but where there are only the light of wisdom and the rain of compassion. Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda, 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 Namanda. So my main point today is something I think that maybe we all need, pandemic or not, but especially having lived through 2 years of the pandemic, we need to think about getting some balance into our lives, right? Um, so I think it's a great idea to have Ohigan, the spring equinox and fall equinox services. But, I got to thinking about this because, as you heard, I've lived in many different countries, and Japan is really famous for four beautiful seasons. So, spring, summer, winter, fall, they're all very different. And they even have an expression for Ohigan, right? They say, what is it? Atsusa mo samusa mo higan made. It means, even though, if you know Japanese winters, they're really cold, especially in Kyoto. And then Japanese summers are terrible. They're so hot and humid. But then we say, well, when we get to the spring equinox or the fall equinox, then things will balance out. It'll be okay. So I was thinking about this because, Ohigan is actually uniquely, as far as Buddhists go, a uniquely Japanese observance. But and I guess because of all these beautiful seasons, and it is a really great idea to think about this regardless of the kind of seasons we have. So then I got to thinking, I wonder if Hilo is sort of like Southern California, where I am, where I feel like there's no season. It's just like the song says, it never rains in Southern California. It doesn't. So please send us some rain. But is it always kind of warm and you don't need winter clothes and so on? So I thought, I better check. So I Googled it and I found something really neat. It says Hilo has two seasons, good and better. Ha ha ha. That's what it said. And I thought, oh, how nice. And I have been to Hawaii, to the island, and I remember the weather was very pleasant, but you have microclimates like we do. So I remember one day we were golfing and it was nice and sunny, and then we finished and we went down the hillside, the mountain, and it was pouring rain. And so, maybe you're used to that. So you have different seasons all in one day. Kind of reminds me of Ecuador. Um, like its name, it's right on the equator. And so they don't have the four seasons either. So um, uh, actually, in one day, it goes from winter through spring, summer, fall, and back to winter by nighttime in Quito, which is about 2 miles up in the Andes Mountains. So it gets cold, but it also gets really hot because it's on the equator. But all this happens in the course of one day. And the sun rises exactly at 6 a.m. and it goes down exactly at 6 p.m. every day. So anyway, my point to all of this is that depending on where you are, you may or may not really have spring or autumn equinox. And so should we just forget about it? No, I don't think we should. I think it's a good reason for us to stop and take stock of ourselves and try to rebalance ourselves. Um, Even if the weather is about the same as usual, same old. And so I think some of these great traditions that come to us from our forebears in Japan, we can repurpose or at least interpret to suit us wherever we are, so that we understand why, right? And so I thought, okay, well, what is it in spring? Well, we all have taxes. I guess that's an annual taking stock of things. And in fall, usually the kids go back to school, right? If it's not a pandemic where you're learning from home, but anyway, there are changes, and both of those things are times to take stock of ourselves. So let's think about it that way. Um, so these days, when we take stock of things, I don't know how you're feeling, but if I turn on the TV, all the news is about the war in Ukraine, and it's so terrible, right? It really breaks my heart to see what's going on. And it's very easy to say, oh, that guy is such a villain, he's a real bad guy, and those guys are the victims, and so on. And we're watching it on TV, maybe for the first time, we're getting to see a war unrolling in real time on people's phones, because everyone has a smartphone, and so you get all kinds of video footage of things that are really going on right now. And I know we all feel this is such a terrible thing. Um, but there are many things that make me feel like our planet is going out of kilter right now. Climate change is a biggie. I know that your island, well, Hawaii, relies a lot on tourism, and with climate change, it really has a huge effect. It's not just on tourism, it's about the way we all live. Migration of people, there are now more people migrating in the world, whether they're refugees or economic migrants and so on. There are millions of people who are moving, and I get this mental picture in my mind of people moving from places where they have no chance of making a decent life to places where they hear that people are living well, or at least can make some kind of life. And I think of the planet tipping because of all of this movement going on. And so there are all of these global issues um, that are really, it almost makes you think, whoa, is the Earth going to spin off of its axis? It's not even just on Earth. Today in the news, they were talking about the International Space Station, and it's so childish, the well, let me say the Russians saying, well, we're not going to cooperate with you Americans, and it's just a back and forth, and I picture these American astronauts up in the International Space Station. They're probably good friends by now, or not, uh, over time, being cramped together in the space station with their Russian counterparts. But I'm sure that they're professionals together, and they just look down on the Earth that has no boundaries that you can see, and they wonder about it, right? So, it always boils down to my way versus your way. I'm right, you're wrong, and yet when we think about it, don't most people want the same thing? Don't we all want to find some kind of peace of heart and peace of mind? So I want to go back to a book I referenced yesterday, just before the pandemic came out. We received these books, More Moving Forward Just As You Are. It's the English translation by Reverend Takashi Miyaji of Monshu-sama, our current Monshu, Kojun Otani, wrote this small piece, and it's very everyday Buddhist, down to earth. And here's what he says um, about what's going on in the world. Everything in this world exists based on interdependency. When we are not aware of this, we tend to think to ourselves that our own perspective is the only one that is right and justified. This is what causes conflicts to arise. When we arm ourselves and attack others, the peace that might be attained from it will never last long. It's necessary that we first treat others with the same care and respect that we would show ourselves, right? Goes without saying, but we need to be reminded. And I think the key word here is ourselves. So yesterday in our seminar, we were talking about reminding ourselves what Buddhism is all about. And Buddhism basically is about self-awareness. Self-awareness. It's not about looking at Ukraine or the world or Russia or wherever and saying, oh, aren't they terrible? It's about reflecting upon our own self, starting from there first. And as I said, I don't know about you, but I'm kind of feeling out of kilter because of things going on. The pandemic, I think that really knocked a lot of us off our feet, and we don't feel all that steady, but we're getting used to it, or even getting tired of it by now, right? Um, but uh, we can't just see things from our own personal viewpoint. For example, we could wish that there's no war going on over in Ukraine, but at the same time, and so we think, what can we do? What can we do? And then the government decides to put on sanctions and so on. Don't buy gasoline from Russia. And then what do you know? We're paying over $6 here in Southern California. Maybe it might even be worse for you. I don't know, but it's pretty bad, huh? And so, it's two sides of it. We want to be compassionate to the others, and yet we think of ourselves as well, right? In other words, our compassion is so limited. We have a little bit of compassion, just small compassion, but when it comes to uh, affecting each of us, we don't have that kind of unconditional compassion for others, right? Right? So, it means that because of that, because we can't see things just as they are, we're kind of off balance. We're sort of spinning out of control. It's like imagining yourself. Oh, yesterday on TV, I saw these actresses who were being interviewed, and they were asked, "How do you play a scene where you're supposed to be drunk?" And one of the actresses said, "I've never had a drink in my life, so I didn't know, but my acting coach told me to spin around and around, and I would have that same effect." And when you think of it, that's kind of true, I guess. But isn't that the way we are really? If we stop and think of it, we're running here and there and thinking, "Oh, what's going on? What has the world come to?" and so on. But in fact, we're just not grounding ourselves and reflecting, okay, what is my reality? Not about out there, but in here. What is my reality in here? I was thinking about spinning. I guess you might have seen some of the Olympics. I like to watch the figure skaters, and wow, all those spins that they do, how do they not get dizzy? But I thought about that, and they have to be so mindful, they have to be so aware of everything that's going on in their body, not only their body, but in their mind in every moment. So they're totally aware all the time, so they don't get all dizzy. So, what about us? Are we aware of what's going on in our heart minds? How often do we do that? Or do we just go blah, 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 but we don't notice what's coming out of our mouth, what's going through our minds, or even some of the things that we're doing? That's our usual default, right? So I think no wonder we feel out of balance, right? Dukkha, yesterday we talked about dukkha. Suffering is usually how we translate it, but literally it means a wheel where the axle is off center, so we're out of kilter. Do you feel out of kilter? It's not just because of the pandemic. It's not because of wars. There's a lot of stuff going on in your life, and it throws you off kilter. And uh, and so we have to think, what is the cause of our suffering? And you know what it is. Our junior YBA high schoolers like to call it gas, right? Greed, aversion, and stupidity. So greed could also be clinging to an idea, attachment to certain things, desire as well. Aversion could also be anger and hatred, all of those negative feelings. And stupidity is really delusion. The delusion, I always think it's more about thinking that it's about me at the center. It's all about me, right? Delusion. It's not seeing things as they really are, where I'm a part of the interdependent web of all life, right? We don't look at those things very often, unless maybe you're here or you go to a Dharma discussion or a Dharma school and you think about it then. But no wonder, we get all pumped up with our gas, right? Just think of a balloon and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Our heads are getting bigger and bigger as we think about me, as we're so me centered without even realizing it. And then imagine, kids like to do this. They blow up the balloon and then they let it go, let her rip, and it goes flying all over the place, out of control. Is that how we are? Or are we so full of our thoughts about, what I want to do, why I don't like that guy, how come they don't do things my way, all of these things, so that our head gets swollen and swollen and we get so top heavy, right? You know what happens with top heavy vehicles? They're the ones that are about to roll over easily, right? Or, the other day I was in the garden and I was looking at our jade plant. Do you have a jade plant? They're so easy to grow, especially in a place where there's not too much water because they don't need a lot of water. But for some reason, they get so heavy on top. And then if you don't watch it, they fall over. Is that us? Are we jade plants? We have to do some care and tending of ourselves. It has to start with ourselves. It's not about pointing fingers out there and saying, wow, those guys are so terrible. Our work is to look inside of ourselves. And so when we talk about wisdom, because we talk about the light of wisdom, in Buddhism, wisdom is about no separation between me and you, no separation between self and other. And so when I stop and I think, okay, well, look at me in the light of how others show me, whoa, I'm not perfect. In fact, I have a lot of imperfections. Then I see my greed, my anger, my aversion, my delusion, my stupidity, my ignorance. When I engage with other people, I realize that, right? So that's one side of the coin. And the other side of the coin is that I'm like this, so wow, I really need a lot of help. In other words, I receive a lot of compassion from life. Just think of it. Wow, look at the compassion for me anyway is finally getting to share the Dharma with you via this thing called Zoom, which most of us didn't know anything or much about a couple of years ago, and now it feels like the whole world uses it. And we have this pandemic, but the good thing that arose out of that was that we discovered, wow, we can share the Dharma with a lot more people, or we can access the Dharma from a lot more sources. So this is a positive thing that we might not have done had the pandemic not happened. But we have so many things to be grateful for, right? You get to live in Hawaii. So as Sensei said, we had this video we made because Southern Californians love to go to Hawaii, as you probably know. And so even the picture of the airplane was Hawaiian Airlines. Uh, and so, why do we think that way? Because the picture that we have in our mind is, well, exactly what you have. And so, we are very fortunate. We have that ability to be able to enjoy each other and enjoy each other's space and so on. I'm just smiling because I have such pleasant memories of visiting your island several years ago with my husband. Um, but there are so many things that everyone receives unconditionally, right? You have sunshine, you have rain, you get to have a volcano. People travel thousands of miles to just go and look at it. You have delicious food that you can't get in a lot of other places. But even simple things that are simple but dear, like the kindness of a stranger, um, like somebody's smile, it's just right when you need it, and they don't know it, but you receive it. Um, Toilet paper. I'm sure you have toilet paper. And I hope you didn't hoard it when they first had the lockdown, but it seems crazy, but we had that big discussion. And oh, and you have Kona coffee right there. So now, it's only half kidding, but we have more things than we could ever count as things to be grateful for. And it has nothing to do with whether you're a good person or a bad person. We receive these things unconditionally. So when we take these two elements into consideration, that we are hopeless, ordinary beings without any hope of doing any kind of practice to attain enlightenment, and at the same time we receive this great package, how could we not feel humbled and grateful and joyful? Then we realize, wow, wisdom, Buddhist wisdom, takes care of me. because we're all one together. And that's the compassion as well. So it's like the two wings of the bird. You can't have one without the other, right? To fly smoothly, you need both the wisdom and compassion. And we're beneficiaries of that. So it's there all along. It's just our way of looking at things that makes us think that the Buddha is on the other shore. The Buddha is with us all the time, but we have our eyes closed. So wake up, look inside, do your homework. This is not self-power. Just wake up to see what is there all along. Um, just I was as I was thinking about today's talk and the events in the Ukraine, um, I, and seeing BJ's name being there. Hi, BJ. Um, I thought about this song. I don't know if you wrote this, but peace begins with me. I think it's coming out of Hawaii Kyodan, but that's the key thing. Peace begins with me. It doesn't begin out there saying, oh, I wish Russia and Ukraine would be at peace. It begins with me, and then it spreads out. Again, in this book, the Gomoshu Sama says, become conscious of something is not just a national, becoming conscious of a problem is not just a national issue, but a more basic, intimate one. So we can begin to build a world of peace from the ground up. We have to have that foundation of from the ground up. So he also said that if everyone thought that the issue of world peace didn't involve the way that you think, then the problem is going to keep on being passed on and nothing will ever change. So it means we have to start with thinking about the way we see things first. And then he asks, is it okay for the responsibility to get passed on without doing anything about it? He means without doing our own work to open our heart minds to receive the compassion of Amida Buddha. So he says, I believe that there's still much more work that needs to be done. So we don't just keep it for ourselves, but in our gratitude and our joy, then we share it with others. So I see I've gone over time, so I'm going to wrap it up here. I have a habit of going over time, sorry. Let's close in this reflection. Dasho, in the final analysis, it would be splendid if all people who say the Nembutsu, not just yourself, do so not with thoughts of themselves, but for the sake of the country. For those who feel that their own awakening is completely settled, should, mindful of the Buddha's benevolence, hold the Nembutsu in their hearts and say it to respond in gratitude to that benevolence with the wish, may there be peace in the world and may the Buddha's teaching spread. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo.